World War I, Episode 6, the final chapter. Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well. Welcome to the final episode of our six-part series on World War I. We have traveled from the first spark in 1914 to the collapse of empires. Today, we witness the final days of the conflict, the signing of the armistice, and the peace treaty that changed the world forever. World War I, the war that never really ended. A world history series by the perfect professor. Part 1. When the guns fell silent and nothing felt finished. At 11 o'clock in the morning, on the 11th day of the 11th month of 1918, the guns stopped firing. Not slowly, not cautiously, not with hesitation. They stopped everywhere almost at once. For 4 years, the sound of artillery had been constant. So constant that it had stopped being noise and become atmosphere. Like wind, like weather. And then suddenly it was gone. Silence was not peace. In the trenches, soldiers did not cheer immediately. Some did not move at all. They had learned through blood and repetition that silence was dangerous. Silence often came before bombardment. Silence often meant something worse was about to begin. Men waited, hands still gripping rifles, bodies still crouched low, eyes still scanning a horizon they no longer trusted. No one wanted to be the first to believe. The war had rewired instincts. 4 years of industrial killing had changed the human nervous system. Soldiers no longer reacted like civilians. Their instincts were calibrated for survival, not celebration. Loud sounds triggered panic. Quiet felt unnatural. Stillness felt suspicious. The war had trained humanity for a world that no longer existed. There was no universal joy. In some cities, church bells rang. In others, people stood in silence, unsure how to respond. Some cried openly. Some laughed uncontrollably. Some felt nothing at all. Joy requires energy. And by 1918, energy had been spent. Victory felt abstract. Governments declared victory. Flags were raised. Speeches were written. Parades were planned. But victory did not explain the empty villages. It did not explain the missing generation. It did not explain the smell of death that still lingered in memory. Victory answered none of the important questions. The world had forgotten how to stop. The machinery of war did not shut down instantly. Factories continued running. Trains kept moving. Supply chains remained active. Entire economies had been built around destruction. They did not know how to reverse themselves. Stopping war was not a switch. It was a dismantling process, and no one had planned for it. 4 years of momentum. World War I had created momentum on a scale humanity had never experienced. Millions of men had been mobilized. Industries had been retooled. Governments had centralized power. Everything moved fast. Everything was coordinated. Everything was urgent. Peace demanded slowness. The world no longer remembered how. Soldiers stayed in place. Even after the armistice, many soldiers remained where they were. They did not immediately return home. They waited for orders that came slowly. The war had trained them to obey systems, not intuition. When the systems paused, they froze. The psychological lag. History often records the end of wars as dates. November 11th, 1918. But psychologically, wars do not end on dates. They end when people feel safe again. And in 1918, no one did. The body survived. The mind did not move on. For many soldiers, the war did not end that morning. It followed them. In the way they walked, in the way they slept, in the way they reacted to everyday life. The guns had fallen silent. Their nervous systems had not. The first night of peace. That first night after the armistice was strange. Some men slept deeply for the first time in years. Others could not sleep at all. Night had always meant bombardment. Darkness had always meant danger. Peace felt unfamiliar, almost intrusive. A world trying to remember itself. Civilians tried to return to normal life. Shops reopened. Public transport resumed. Newspapers printed hopeful headlines. But underneath the surface, something had shifted. The world no longer trusted itself. Before the war, the future felt predictable. Before 1914, people believed in progress. Science would solve problems. Industry would create prosperity. Education would make societies wiser. World War I shattered that confidence completely. Progress had produced gas and artillery. Science had not prevented catastrophe. It had optimized it. Industry had not improved life. It had mechanized death. Education had not stopped war. It had produced better planners for it. The first crack in modern faith. World War I was the first moment when modern humanity realized advancement does not guarantee wisdom. This realization did not come gently. It came through mass graves, the weight of survival. Survivors felt an unexpected burden. Why did I live when others didn't? This question had no answer, and unanswered questions rot from the inside. Returning home was not relief. Soldiers dreamed of home for years. But when they arrived, something felt wrong. Cities were louder. People complained about small things. Life felt trivial. The scale of suffering they carried did not fit civilian life. Civilians could not understand. How could they? They had not lived underground. They had not watched friends disappear in explosions. They had not learned to normalize death. Language failed. Experience created distance. Silence became the bridge. Most veterans stopped trying to explain. It was easier to remain quiet than to feel misunderstood. Silence became common. Silence became expected. Silence became policy. The war had entered society. The war was no longer on battlefields. It was in homes, in relationships, in the way people reacted to uncertainty. World War I had become internal. Governments wanted closure. Leaders wanted to move forward. They wanted reconstruction. They wanted stability. They wanted legitimacy. They spoke of a new era. But eras do not change because speeches say they do. The cost was too large to process. The numbers were overwhelming. Millions of dead. Millions wounded. Entire regions destroyed. The scale of loss was beyond comprehension. When loss becomes too large, the mind stops engaging. Monuments could not contain grief. Memorials were built. Names were carved in stone. But stone does not answer questions. It does not explain why. It only confirms that something terrible happened. The world chose to look forward. Not because it had healed, but because looking backward was unbearable. This decision would have consequences. Professor's reflection. World War I did not end when the guns stopped. It ended when humanity decided not to fully confront what had happened. And that decision ensured the war would never really end at all. Closing of Part 1. The silence of November 1918 was not peace. It was shock. A pause between disasters. A world standing still, unsure whether it was safe to breathe again. The war had stopped, but history had not finished with it. Part 2. The survivors who came back broken. They called them survivors. But survival was only a technicality. When the soldiers returned, the war followed them home. Not in uniforms, not in weapons, but in habits, reactions, silences. In the invisible ways a human being changes when pushed too far. The men who returned were not the men who left. Families waited for familiar faces. What they received were altered versions. Men who startled at slammed doors. Men who woke up shouting. Men who stared into nothing for long stretches of time. The bodies had returned. The people had not, at least not fully. No one had prepared society for this. World War I had prepared nations for mobilization. It had prepared industries for production. It had not prepared anyone for aftermath. There were no systems for psychological care. No understanding of long-term trauma. No language to describe what was happening. Shell shock was a word without meaning. Doctors noticed symptoms. Shaking hands. Paralysis without injury. Blindness without damage. Uncontrollable fear. They called it shell shock. But they did not agree on what it meant. Some believed it was physical damage from explosions. Others believed it was weakness. Many believed it was cowardice. Almost no one believed it was injury. Breaking was treated as failure. Men who collapsed under pressure were punished. Some were demoted. Some were imprisoned. Some were executed for cowardice. The war demanded endurance beyond biology and blamed humans for failing to provide it. The cost of misunderstanding trauma. What could not be explained was denied. What was denied was stigmatized. What was stigmatized went underground. Trauma did not disappear. It learned to hide. Silence became survival. Veterans learned quickly. Speaking about the war made people uncomfortable. They did not want details. They did not want nightmares. They did not want fear. They wanted closure. So, survivors learned to be quiet. Homes filled with unspoken tension. Families sensed something was wrong, but they did not know what to call it. Children learned which topics caused anger. Spouses learned when to stop asking questions. Entire households reorganized around invisible wounds. Nighttime was the worst. Sleep did not bring rest. It brought memory. Explosions replayed. Faces returned. Moments repeated endlessly. Some veterans avoided sleep. Some drank to escape it. Some never escaped at all. Substances became medicine. Alcohol was cheap, widely available, socially accepted. It numbed memory. It softened fear. Addiction spread quietly. Society treated it as moral failure, not symptom. Violence moved indoors. Anger that had no outlet found targets. Domestic violence increased. Street fights became common. Arguments escalated quickly. The war had trained people to solve problems through force. Peace did not retrain them. The burden of survival guilt. Many veterans carried a question that had no answer. Why did I live? Friends had died next to them. Stronger men. Kinder men. Better men. Survival felt arbitrary. And arbitrariness breeds guilt. The dead were everywhere. Not physically. Psychologically. Every empty chair. Every unreturned letter. Every familiar face missing from crowds. The dead occupied mental space constantly. Society wanted heroes. Governments celebrated bravery. Medals were awarded. Stories were simplified. Complex pain did not fit propaganda. The heroic narrative erased the damaged ones. Those who could not perform gratitude. Some veterans could not smile for parades. They did not feel victorious. They felt used. Society did not know what to do with them, so it ignored them. Children inherited the silence. Children grew up around unspoken fear. They sensed danger without explanation. They learned anxiety before vocabulary. Trauma passed not through stories, but through behavior. The first generation raised by war damage. Parents disciplined harshly. Emotion was suppressed. Control felt necessary. The war reshaped parenting, and parenting reshaped the future. Why this trauma did not end? Because it was never processed. Because societies rushed forward. Because healing was seen as weakness. Because understanding came decades too late. Psychology lagged behind history. The science of trauma did not yet exist. What World War I created, World War II would later study. But the first generation suffered without explanation. The quiet loneliness of survivors. Many veterans felt isolated. Civilians could not relate. Other veterans avoided talking. Shared experience did not guarantee shared healing. Isolation became common. The war stayed inside language. Expressions changed. Dark humor increased. Cynicism became fashionable. Hope felt naive. Language reflected damage. Professors' reflection. World War I did not just injure bodies. It rewired nervous systems on a mass scale. And societies that ignore mass trauma inherit its consequences. Politically, culturally, generationally. The long shadow. This trauma did not vanish in the 1920s. It shaped decisions. It shaped fear. It shaped how people reacted to the next crisis. The war had ended. The damage had not. Closing of Part 2. The survivors returned home. But they brought the trenches with them. Into bedrooms. Into streets. Into children yet unborn. World War I did not remain in history books. It embedded itself in human behavior. Part 3. A world that lost its faith in the future. Before 1914, the future felt like a promise. After 1918, it felt like a threat. Before the war, tomorrow was trusted. At the beginning of the 20th century, people believed something deeply, that the world was improving, science was advancing, education was spreading, technology was solving problems. Progress felt inevitable. History appeared to move forward in a straight line. World War I broke that line. 4 years of industrial slaughter shattered the idea of guaranteed progress. The same science that cured disease had perfected poison gas. The same industry that built cities had flattened landscapes. The same education that produced philosophers had produced generals who planned mass death. Progress no longer felt safe. The future became unreliable. After the war, people stopped assuming tomorrow would be better. They assumed it would be different, and often worse. This shift was subtle but permanent. Hope turned into caution. Long-term plans disappeared. People stopped thinking in decades. They thought in months, sometimes weeks. The future felt fragile, something that could collapse at any moment. The birth of modern anxiety. Anxiety did not exist as a clinical term yet, but it existed culturally. People felt constantly alert, easily startled, uneasy during calm moments. The war had trained humanity to expect catastrophe. Certainty became naive. Optimism began to look foolish. Those who spoke confidently about peace or progress sounded disconnected. Cynicism felt smarter. Doubt felt realistic. The lost generation was not just about age. The lost generation was not simply young people. It was an entire mindset. People who had seen systems fail so completely that they no longer trusted authority, tradition, or promises. Authority lost its moral weight. Governments had promised quick victory. They delivered years of slaughter. Churches had promised meaning. They struggled to explain mass death. Institutions lost credibility. Obedience became conditional. Faith shifted from institutions to individuals. People stopped believing in systems. They believed in themselves, or in nothing. This shift weakened social cohesion. Society became more fragmented. Culture reflected the damage. Art changed. Literature stopped celebrating heroism. Stories became fragmented, bleak, introspective. Music grew dissonant. Visual art rejected realism. Beauty felt dishonest after mass graves. Humor turned dark. Jokes became cynical. Laughter became defensive. Humor no longer relieved tension. It masked it. Why this cultural shift mattered. Culture is how societies process trauma before psychology exists. World War I trauma surfaced first in art. Politics followed later. Time itself felt different. The war distorted perception of time. For years had felt endless. Now peace felt temporary. People lived with a constant sense of before and after. The world had been split. Memory became unstable. Veterans remembered moments vividly. Entire years felt blank. Trauma does this. Society mirrored it. Some events were mythologized. Others were avoided entirely. Monuments could not restore meaning. Statues were built. Names were carved. But memorials did not answer the hardest question. Why did this happen? Without answers, grief lingered. The fear of another war. People did not say it openly, but they felt it. If this could happen once, why not again? Peace felt like a temporary condition, not a stable state. More like a pause. A fragile window that could close at any moment. Children grew up in this atmosphere. They absorbed fear without understanding it. They inherited caution. They learned that safety was conditional. The war shaped people who never saw it. Why this shift never reversed? Because nothing fully addressed it. No global healing. No accountability. No collective processing. The world moved forward without closure. Economic shocks reinforced the fear. Inflation, unemployment, market instability. Each crisis confirmed what people already suspected. The future cannot be trusted. Politics became reactive. Long-term vision disappeared. Leaders focused on survival. Quick fixes replaced careful planning. Fear drove policy. Extremes felt safer than uncertainty. Radical ideas offered certainty. Simple explanations. Clear enemies. After chaos, simplicity feels comforting. Moderation felt weak. Nuance requires patience. Post-war societies had none. Anger felt honest. Complexity felt evasive. Professors' reflection. World War I did not just traumatize individuals. It traumatized humanity's relationship with the future. Once that trust was broken, the 20th century became a series of reactions, not plans. The psychological legacy. This was the moment humanity learned. The world can fall apart faster than we can understand it. That lesson never left. Closing of Part 3. World War I did something no previous war had done. It made the future feel dangerous. And when societies fear tomorrow, they make decisions that ensure it. Part 4. Peace that could not heal. Peace arrived with signatures. Healing did not. The world wanted closure, not understanding. By 1919, the world was exhausted. Leaders wanted to move on. Populations wanted relief. Economies wanted stability. Everyone wanted the war to be over. Very few wanted to understand it. Peace was treated as an event, a conference, a treaty, a ceremony. Peace was framed as something you could declare. But peace is not a declaration. It is a process. And processes take time. Time no one felt they had. The victors were afraid. Although they had won, they did not feel secure. They had seen how fragile power was, how quickly empires collapsed, how uncontrollable mass violence could become. Fear shaped their decisions. Fear always does. Punishment felt safer than reconciliation. Reconciliation requires trust. Trust felt dangerous. Punishment felt controlled. So, punishment became policy. The logic of humiliation. The defeated were blamed, not just for starting the war, but for its entire horror. Responsibility was made collective. Guilt was nationalized. This felt like justice. It was not. Why humiliation is politically efficient. Humiliation simplifies narratives. It creates villains. It creates moral clarity. It creates emotional release for the victors. But it also creates something else. Resentment. Resentment does not expire. It waits. It reorganizes. It looks for language, leaders, and opportunities. Economic pain became a weapon. Reparations were imposed. Industries were restricted. Trade was limited. Currencies destabilized. Economic suffering was treated as leverage. Leverage works only in the short term. Dignity was not considered essential. Leaders believed stability could be enforced. That dignity was optional. History would prove otherwise. Societies do not recover on empty stomachs. Inflation destroyed savings. Wages collapsed. The middle class, once a stabilizing force, was hollowed out. Desperation followed. Desperation changes values. When survival is threatened, priorities shift. Abstract ideals lose relevance. Immediate solutions gain appeal. This is how extremism enters politely. The illusion of finality. Treaties were written as if history could be closed. Borders were drawn as if people would adapt quietly. Problems were frozen, not solved. Frozen problems thaw. Peace became a performance. Publicly, leaders spoke of stability. Privately, they prepared for collapse. Armies were reduced, but not dismantled. Weapons were stored, not destroyed. Trust was never rebuilt. The myth of never again. The phrase was repeated endlessly. It sounded reassuring. It was meaningless without structural change. Why accountability was avoided? True accountability would have required admitting shared responsibility, acknowledging systemic failure, limiting future power. No major power wanted this. So, accountability was externalized. Blame became a substitute for learning. Blame allows movement without reflection. Learning requires humility. Humility was scarce after victory. New states, old anxiety. New nations emerged from the wreckage. They were celebrated as progress, but they were fragile, surrounded by rivals, filled with minorities, economically unstable. Independence arrived without security. Minorities became vulnerable overnight. People did not move. Borders moved around them. Languages became suspect. Loyalties questioned. Fear followed lines on maps. Violence did not end. It changed form. The war ended, but armed conflict continued in fragments. Civil wars, border skirmishes, political assassinations. Violence became localized, but constant. Why peace failed at the psychological level. Peace requires trust in the future. World War I had destroyed that trust. People expected collapse, so they prepared for it. Preparation itself creates instability. Governments focused on control. Surveillance increased. Policing intensified. Dissent was monitored. Order was valued over reconciliation. This hardened societies. Trauma was never addressed collectively. Millions were traumatized. No one asked how to heal. The world tried to rebuild structures without repairing the people inside them. The silence around pain became dangerous. Unspoken suffering does not remain neutral. It turns into anger, into conspiracy, into radical identity. Why democracy struggled? Democracy requires patience and trust. Post-war societies had neither. People wanted certainty. Democracy offers debate. Debate felt weak. Authoritarian answers felt efficient. Authoritarianism promised speed. Decisions without delay. Solutions without compromise. After chaos, control feels comforting. The peace created winners without security. Victors feared retaliation. Losers feared humiliation. No one felt safe. This is not peace. It is suspended conflict. Professor's reflection. World War I did not fail to end violence. It failed to end the reasons for violence. Peace without dignity, without accountability, without healing, is simply war waiting. The quiet preparation for the next disaster. By the mid-1920s, many sensed it, not consciously, but emotionally. Something was unfinished. Something was unstable. History had not concluded. Closing of Part 4. The treaties ended the fighting. They did not end the conflict. They replaced open war with structural resentment. And resentment is patient. Part 5. The century this war created. World War I did not end an era. It created one. The 20th century did not begin in 1900. Calendars say the 20th century began in 1900. History disagrees. The real beginning came in 1914. That is when the rules changed. Before this war, violence had limits. War existed before World War I, but it was bounded. Armies were smaller. Civilians were less involved. Economies were not fully mobilized. War was an event, not a condition. World War I turned war into a system. For the first time, entire societies were mobilized. Factories, railways, food supply, information, labor. Everything served the war. This was not battlefield conflict. This was total war. Total war changed the relationship between state and citizen. Before 1914, governments governed. After 1914, governments managed survival. They controlled prices, labor, speech, movement. Extraordinary power became normal. Temporary measures became permanent habits. The state learned it could do this. World War I proved something dangerous. That populations could be controlled at scale. During crises, that dissent could be suppressed. In the name of survival, that rights could be paused and later partially restored. Governments never forgot this lesson. Fear became a governing tool. Fear unified people. Fear accelerated decision-making. Fear justified extremes. World War I taught leaders that fear works. Speed replaced deliberation. Decisions during the war had to be fast. Hesitation meant death. This logic survived the war. Speed became a virtue. Slowness became weakness. But speed without reflection is dangerous. The century learned to live in emergency mode. World War I normalized crisis thinking. Everything became urgent. Everything required immediate response. The idea of permanent emergency was born. The blueprint for future wars was written here. World War II did not invent mass mobilization, propaganda, industrial killing, civilian targeting. It inherited them. World War I was the prototype. Technology became central to power. After this war, power meant production capacity, logistical reach, technological advantage. Human courage mattered less. Systems mattered more. The human became secondary. In planning rooms, people became numbers. Casualties became acceptable margins. Losses were anticipated. This logic survived into future conflicts. World War I normalized mass death. Not emotionally, administratively. When millions die and systems continue, something fundamental changes. Societies adapt to loss. This adaptation is dangerous. Ideology replaced tradition. Empires collapsed. Tradition lost authority. Into this vacuum rushed ideology. Ideologies promised meaning, clarity, direction. They simplified a broken world. Why extremes flourished? Moderation requires trust in systems. World War I destroyed that trust. Extremes offered certainty. Certainty feels safer than complexity. After chaos, politics became existential. Disagreements stopped being debates. They became threats. Opponents were no longer wrong. They were dangerous. This mindset defined the century. Violence became legitimate again. World War I re-legitimized violence. As a political tool, revolutions, coups, assassinations, all followed the logic the war normalized. Borders became permanent sources of conflict. The lines drawn after the war created permanent instability. They were not designed for harmony. They were designed for convenience. Convenience does not last. Decolonization followed the same pattern. Colonies watched empires fall. They learned the lesson. Power could be challenged. Violence could succeed. World War I planted the seed for global upheaval. The psychological legacy was global. Even societies far from Europe felt the shift. Optimism declined. Caution rose. The world felt smaller, more dangerous. Science lost its moral shield. Before the war, science symbolized progress. After gas chambers and artillery, science felt morally ambiguous. Useful, but dangerous. Ethics lagged behind capability. Technology advanced faster than moral frameworks. This imbalance defines the modern age. World War I created it. The century became reactionary. Rather than building slowly, societies reacted constantly to crises, to fear, to instability. Long-term vision disappeared. The war taught humanity the wrong lesson. Instead of learning restraint, humanity learned escalation. If something works, scale it. If it fails, intensify it. This logic survived. Even peace became militarized. Post-war peace relied on threat, on deterrence, on preparedness. Peace itself became conditional. The world never fully demobilized again. After 1918, armies shrank, but they never disappeared. Weapons stockpiles remained. Plans remained. Suspicion remained. World War I created the modern security state. Surveillance, intelligence agencies, centralized control, all expanded during the war. All remained afterward. The citizen became a resource. Labor, data, compliance. The individual was absorbed into systems. This relationship persists. The 20th century was defined here. Every major event that followed, World War II, the Cold War, nuclear standoffs, carried World War I's DNA. The war trained the world for continuous instability. Professor's reflection. World War I did not just change borders. It changed expectations. It taught humanity to live with fear, to normalize crisis, and to trust systems more than people. That is its true legacy. The quiet truth. We still think in World War I terms. Emergency. Speed. Control. Sacrifice. The century never outgrew its origin. Closing of Part 5. World War I did not end in 1918. It expanded into politics, into technology, into the structure of modern life. The 20th century was not shaped by this war. It was created by it. Part 6. The final warning. History rarely announces itself. It repeats quietly, until the consequences are too loud to ignore. The comfortable lie we tell ourselves. Every generation believes the same thing. We are more advanced now. We are more educated. We are more rational. The people of 1914 believed this too. They lived in a world of telegraphs, railways, mass education, global trade, and scientific optimism. They believed war belonged to the past. Then they walked into the trenches. Modernity did not save them. World War I was not caused by ignorance. It was caused by confidence. Confidence that systems were stable. Confidence that progress was permanent. Confidence that escalation could be controlled. That confidence killed millions. The real danger was not hatred. Hatred has always existed. What made World War I different was speed. Decisions moved faster than understanding. Mobilization outran diplomacy. Systems activated before reflection could occur. Once momentum took over, stopping became impossible. Systems do not feel regret. People feel regret. Systems do not. Systems optimize. They escalate. They continue. World War I revealed what happens. When systems outgrow human judgment, we built faster than we learned. Human institutions learned how to mobilize millions, produce destruction efficiently, normalize mass loss. They did not learn how to stop. That imbalance defines the modern world. Why this war still matters? Because the structures born then still exist. Emergency powers, permanent surveillance, crisis-driven governance, fear-based decision-making. These are not relics. They are standard operating procedures. The war did not end. It changed form. The trenches disappeared. The mindset did not. The belief that speed equals safety, control equals stability, sacrifice equals virtue, still shapes policy. We still think in World War I logic. When faced with crisis, societies still respond with escalation, mobilization, urgency, rarely with restraint, rarely with pause. The illusion of control returns every time. Every crisis convinces leaders they can manage outcomes. That this time is different. That lessons have been learned. World War I teaches a brutal truth. Complex systems do not collapse slowly. They collapse suddenly. The most dangerous moment is confidence, not fear. Confidence. Confidence that systems will hold. Confidence that escalation can be calibrated. Confidence that someone else is in control. This confidence preceded 1914. It precedes every disaster. The past is not distant. World War I is not ancient history. It lives in borders that still bleed, conflicts that never fully resolved, political systems built on emergency logic. The past was never dismantled. It was layered over. Why remembering is not enough. Memory alone does nothing. Monuments do nothing. Ceremonies do nothing. Understanding changes behavior. World War I asks not to be remembered, but to be understood structurally. The pattern that repeats. Look closely, and the pattern is always the same. Fear, speed, systems, loss, forgetting. World War I followed it. So have many crises since. We are not immune. We use better technology. We communicate faster. We manage larger systems. But we are still human. Our judgment has not evolved as fast as our capabilities. That gap is dangerous. The quiet question this war leaves us. Have we built brakes? For the systems we rely on? Or have we only made them faster? What World War I ultimately teaches: that catastrophe does not require evil intentions. It only requires rigid systems, rapid escalation, delayed reflection. Good intentions are irrelevant once momentum takes over. Why this is the final warning? Because the people of 1914 did not think. They were standing at the edge of a century of violence. They thought they were solving a crisis. History judged otherwise. Professor's final reflection: World War I was not a failure of humanity. It was a failure of restraint. And restraint is still our rarest skill. The war that never really ended. It never ended because its systems were preserved. Its trauma was deferred. Its lessons were diluted. The war ended on paper. It continued in practice. Closing words. The past is not behind us. It is underneath us. Every decision we make stands on foundations laid by those who came before. World War I cracked those foundations. We have been living on them ever since. Final line. History does not repeat because we forget. It repeats because we believe. We are too advanced to repeat it. Before we officially close this series, I have one last question. Now that you've seen the whole story, do you think World War I truly ended, or was it just a long pause before World War II? Let's discuss in the comments. And with that, we conclude our 6-part series on World War I. Thank you so much for following this journey with me from episode 1 to now. It's been an incredible experience diving into this history with you all. I hope you learned something new and valuable. Take care, and see you soon.